close to 10 years. So
7.
he always talks about how he worked all this overtime. So if you put it all together, it's close to 10 years. And I see the hours he works, so I know it's true. I also want to introduce Jack Walsh, who is our manager of technical services. Some of you might know Jack because he came to Williams after Williams purchased lasers. We were very lucky that he was willing to stay with Williams, so he brings an awful lot of expertise, but also knowledge of the area to Williams. And so, again, glad to be working with Jack and with Nick. My name is Helen Humphreys, as Donna said. I work as a senior communications specialist. I recognize some faces, but see a lot of new faces. So I'm glad for the opportunity to be able to meet with you all tonight. Nick is going to give the presentation. What we want to do is give a broad overview of our work in the area, some of the regulations that impact us, and then answer your questions. If you have questions about, some of you might be talking to our land staff about pipelines on your specific property. If you have questions specific to your property, let us know. We'll try and make sure that we have the right people talking to you. But in general, we're here to talk about pipelines and the regulations that impact those pipelines and what we do to make sure those pipelines are safe.
So as Helen mentioned, this is a sort of a brief overview of Williams and what we're doing here.
Can everybody hear him in the back?
I can talk louder.
Well, that's why.
Okay.
Press the button.
Don't press too much. I might fall over. Malnourished. We're one of the leading providers of infrastructure in oil and gas in the United States, with businesses as well in Canada. We've got over 15,000 miles of interstate gas pipelines in our Transco Northwest Pipeline business units supplying gas to various markets throughout the country. We've got 1,000 miles of natural gas liquids transportation pipeline in the western United States and also in the Gulf Coast. We've got over 10,000 miles of oil and gas gathering pipelines in several areas throughout the country. And there'll be a slide that kind of gives you a geographical picture of where we are, where we do this business. We have a daily gas processing capacity of over 6.6 billion cubic feet per day, which as a percentage of overall U.S. gas production is around 10% of U.S. domestic gas production. We have 4,100 employees. We're headquartered in Tulsa, Oklahoma. We have regional offices in Pittsburgh, Houston, and of course our field offices, of which one of those is in Tunkhannock, another one is Park Summit here. We've been in business for 100 years. Our start was in the construction, well, initially in construction of infrastructure like roadways and things like that. Moved into the construction of pipelines. We've been in business a long time. We're in the first half of the century, one of the premier names of pipeline construction before moving into building, owning, operating infrastructure. Right now, the regional focus, and I'll go to the next slide right now because I think it's a little bit more informative. Of course, you know about our operations in the Marcellus, in Pennsylvania, Northeast PA, Southwest PA, and West Virginia. We've got extensive operations in the Gulf of Mexico, offshore, onshore in Texas, and this transcontinental pipeline, which we'll talk about, that transports a great deal of gas for the eastern seaboard markets, along with the bulk of our gas processing infrastructure in the western United States, concentrated in New Mexico, Colorado, and Wyoming. And we also have a gas transport pipeline that supplies a large amount of gas for the Pacific Northwest markets. That's called Northwest Pipeline. Here, this spur that you see off to Kansas, that's an NGL transportation pipeline into central Kansas, where we have storage. Williams actually has a long history in Pennsylvania through one of its operating units, which is Transco. They've safely operated that pipeline within the state for over 50 years. We have over 934 miles of transmission pipeline with 5 compressor stations. I don't know on that slide if we're talking just about transmission stations, but it serves a variety of markets, so New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania. This is a picture, a map of our gathering system as it's currently built out, and with some future pipelines as well in blue. As you can see, the core of our business right now is in Susquehanna County, where we are today, along with connection to markets here with the Springville line that connects to Transco in Luzerne County, and with Laser Heritage Pipeline, the Windsor Pipeline, which connects to Millennium in Broome County. An overview of sort of the infrastructure that we're building out in the area. And we'll talk about this on a future slide, but there's a great deal of gas production, of course, beneath our feet, everybody's aware of. We're building the infrastructure to gather that and bring it to market. We call this, the overarching name that we have for those activities, Susquehanna Supply Hub, with a future takeaway capacity of over 3 BCF. Some key talking points there are around, of course, our Springville pipeline, again, connecting Transco and Luzerne to bring those volumes to the East Coast markets, Jersey and New York, and the laser acquisition, of course, Millennium, and another talking point there around a proposed Constitution pipeline that would bring those volumes to this market here, which you see is Tennessee Gas Pipeline 200 and the Iroquois Pipeline. The need is great. There's a tremendous resource here that's being developed. On the demand side, the need is great as well, because a great many people live in the Northeast. A great many people are consuming gas, and so there's sort of a fortunate coincidence, let's say, where we have a huge supply of gas that can meet that demand and hopefully serve everyone's interests there. So our goals are to develop those takeaway options where we can find those favorable markets for the gas that's here within the Susquehanna Supply Hub, and build that infrastructure. The type of infrastructure that we build, to talk about our gathering pipelines to bring the gas from the wells, compression, and then gas dehydration capacity, which is in the form of glycol dehydration. So here's a graphic, very simplistic. You see here, this is within the bracket here. This is us. The wellheads, we have the gathering pipelines. This monopoly house is compression, dehydration, and of course, these are the interstate gas pipelines, which bring those things to market for a variety of end users, whether it's power or industrial end users or people burner tips in their homes. Here's an overview. I won't go through all of these But of the types of permits and authorizations that are required for all of the work we do, and the really diligent oversight that regulatory bodies do have over our activities. And again, these are an overview of some of the permits that are filed for pipeline construction, compressor station construction, compressor station operation, et cetera. Again, good oversight by regulatory bodies of the work that we do. A little discussion about our operations and how we operate safely. In midstream, as well as in our sister gas transmission pipelines, every compressor station and data from the pipeline is monitored 24 hours by a control room operator in our gas control center in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And there are those operators are trained on the systems that they're operating, have real-time data for the systems that they're operating, and are able to make control decisions about shutting down equipment, dispatching field operators, etc. Pipeline integrity, there are several things that we do from a pipeline integrity perspective. Starting in construction, of course, verifying that we're building pipelines to the applicable standards, coating those pipelines. We're talking about this fusion bonded epoxy coating. That's a coating that prevents corrosion. And then cathodic protection, which in layman's terms is a way to prevent the loss of metal by the charge of the pipeline versus the charge of an anode. Internal inspection is performed on jurisdictional segments of the pipeline. What that means is a tool is run through the pipeline that, using what they call magnetic flux leakage, is able to detect anomalies in coating and also detect defects in the pipe wall. It's another thing that we do to verify the integrity of those assets, and we do that on a frequency that's determined internally. Aerial patrol flyovers, that's just another way that we survey the right-of-way, verify that it is intact and in good shape, and then also they can scan with special cameras for leaks. Safety valves are used for pressure protection, loss of pressure, in order to automatically shut pipelines down under events like overpressure, for instance, to prevent additional supply that would overpressure a pipeline. And we dedicate a great deal of time to continuously training and educating our technicians. That's a big focus. That's something that, coming from other operating companies, I know Williams, in my view, has been very good about. We are very focused on technical training. And then, of course, training with our local emergency responders. We do tabletops with them. We do, over time, we'll do actual drills, not just a tabletop drill, but a sort of a live drill where we'll do an emergency response with them. This is our one call slide. Important one to go over. The majority of issues that occur on our operating pipeline occur because of line strikes, and the majority of them are as a result of a third party digging without calling our one call number. So it's important to know that number. Very simple, 811. Compressor stations, and we've kind of been over this already. Our compressor stations bring in the gas from the gathering system, increase its pressure for admission into transmission. after compression, we dehydrate it to remove water so that it's merchantable, so that it will burn for the end users on the transmission pipelines. And then we meter it, and that's the point where custody transfer occurs. That's the accounting for the gas that's being transmitted to transmission companies. Once the gas is gathered and processed, transmission companies go out for the long haul to bring those volumes to markets. Whether that's, in the case of Transco, where it may be 1, 2, 300 miles, or from the southern terminus to the northern terminus of their line, that may be 1,500 miles. Bringing the gas from where it's produced to the markets for that gas. Along those pipelines, there are booster stations to increase the pressure of the gas as it moves along the transmission line. Central compressor station. We're currently in construction of this station. At present, it will be gathering gas in Susquehanna County and discharging it to Transco through our existing Springville pipeline, and also possibly into the Tennessee Gas Pipeline. In the Constitution Pipeline project, if approved, which is a separate project from Central, could provide additional takeaway capacity by providing access to those other interstate markets that we discussed. Any other interstate pipeline could also meet that need for takeaway capacity from Central, and those would be independent projects from. And now I guess I'll open up the floor for questions and answers.
Based on my conversation with Joe and some other folks, I know you guys have questions. Why don't we start with one that I think a lot of people have. How deep is the pipeline buried? When we construct a pipeline?
That's a good question. Typically, at a minimum 4 feet. At a minimum 4 feet. That's your minimum depth of cover.
And how does Williams or any pipeline company, how do we choose the route, a pipeline route?
How is the pipeline route chosen? Typically, it's chosen to, that's a good question. I'm not an EMC pipeline project manager.
But there's a number of factors. You want to take it, Jeff?
Oh, routing a pipeline is more of an art than a science. You've got to have willing landowners who are willing to actually sell you right away. If it was up to a company to install the pipeline, they'd look at point A and point B and say, all right, shortest place is a straight line, can we do that? And then you've got to go out and look at that route, you've got to look at the topography. A big issue with running Route 11 north and south is it's just a huge gully. So it's difficult to put a pipeline through there. It can be done, it's very expensive, it's difficult. And then you've got to find landowners that are willing to let you go in and put a pipeline. So there's a lot of different factors that go into routing pipelines.
What's the typical age limit on the new pipe buried in the ground?
That new pipe, if it is properly cared for, can last for 100 years or more.
100 years or more.
What's the name of the company that you work for?
Williams.
It's Williams Companies.
The
Everybody
Williams
would go by
Companies
Williams.
is the corporation. The group that we work for directly is called Williams Field Services.
Is there a difference between the brown and the green gas line pipes we see? What is the difference, besides color?
That was my answer.
Probably just a different form or brand of the epoxy coating.
What I've typically seen is that the green pipe, the fusion bonded epoxy coating, that has been typically the pipe that is lay pipe that just goes into the fields. The brown pipe that we've used is a little bit thicker wall, and if you have to do a directional drill to get underneath a wetland or a stream, they'll typically use that. The coating is a little.
Can you talk a little bit more about a directional drill? Because I think a lot of people confuse that with drilling a well pipeline, or excuse me, a well.
Sure, I'm loud. What we do, if we have to cross a stream, or if we have to cross certain roads, state highways, they will not just let you go in and dig up Interstate 81 and lay right across it. So we've actually got a drill underneath that road. And there's a technique called horizontal directional drilling, where they will drill, basically with an auger machine, drill a pilot hole and actually achieve a radius to go underneath that road, start it, come all the way underneath, and they can do it within, very accurate. They'll bore it out, they'll ream it out a couple times, just like you're doing any woodworking, and they'll actually pull the pipe through that drilled out area.
They do it not just under the roads, but wetlands and streams. We drilled under the Susquehanna River, and it has a far less of an impact on that waterway. And it's one of the reasons why we use that technique.
I think the pipe underneath the Susquehanna River is about 70 feet deep under the river.
75.
Yeah, 75.
Well, how do you turn the pipe when it gets down and there's a curve and you got a straight pipe?
They have a special motor, a mud motor that they have on the head of this drill that gets beyond my technical expertise, but they can get down and they know where it's actually located and the degree of deflection and how they actually need to turn that.
Does the pipe bend, or do they gotta
The
put?
pipe does bend, and you have to look at the wall thickness of the pipe, the strength of the pipe. It can only bend a certain radius. So that's why if you need to go down very deep, you have to have a very long drill so that your bend is gradual.
What if you hit rock?
You drill right through it.
Go through it.
Yeah.
I have a couple questions.
Okay.
First of all, one of the proposed rules for the Constitution is across our farm. What's the width? I've heard different things, I know the guy came and he told us the width, but then somebody else says, oh, they need a whole lot more than that. So if you sign a
We're not
contract-
building Constitution, so I don't know exactly. I can tell you that when we go out and we secure pipeline right away, a lot of our right-of-way, the permanent right-of-way will be, say, 40 feet. But during construction, you need more room than that to get in and actually move around and get the equipment in. So we might have an additional 20 feet of temporary workspace. So when they go in and clear, it might be 60 feet. When you're done and everything gets restored, that 20 feet goes back to the landowner for them to do whatever they want with, and then the permanent right-of-way that's left would be 40 feet. And a lot of it may be different. It might be 50 feet and 30 feet, and there's different widths.
Well, he told us 50
50 permanent.
for the Constitution.
That's good.
If you want to give me your contact information, we'll have the appropriate people contact you. We just
Well,
We just
have a
can't
guy
speak for the
that came, and, I had a whole bunch of questions for him when we signed the permission to survey.
Mhm.
And I guess they were surveying yesterday, right around now, they're surveying. So of course, that's not necessarily mean that's the route they're going to take. So then you're not gonna be able to answer my second question. But I'll ask it anyway.
You can ask.
Now, once they put a pipeline in, I shouldn't say will they ever, because there's no such thing as never. What's the chances of, that's what I was wondering with the Constitution, another pipeline going in besides that?
It is possible. I know when I was with Laser and we secured our right-of-ways for a good deal of that pipe, we purchased 2 line options.
Yeah, see, somebody that had
With-
laser go through is the one that mentioned this.
Okay, and that was just with the foresight that if we ever did need capacity to put a second pipe in there,
Mhm.
we would have already paid for it, we would have been able to secure that.
But we really need somebody from the
Yeah,
Constitution
Constitution,
team to talk to you.
And really, the only way that you can answer that, all depends on the market. If the market up in New York and New England, if that's where the producers want to send their gas because that's where they make the most money, and if you guys all have leases, you want the producers to send the gas where they make the most money because then you make the most money. It's all driven by the market.
Well, on the paperwork we got, it said Albany and New York City.
Beth, are you able to re-farm your area on the top of where the pipeline is?
Yeah, if the pipeline, if it's 4 foot in agricultural fields, lots of times we'll go deeper, so maybe 5 feet to the top of the pipe, you could go back over it, plow it, this.
Well, you had said you have a permanent right of way of 40 feet. I wasn't sure whether we were still allowed to use the entire area for farming.
How is that right of way restricted, the use of that right of way? First of all, spell that
Can't
here.
build structures.
You can't plant trees on top of the pipeline, you can't put structures on top of the pipeline. If you're going to dig, you need to make the one call, and you have to have somebody come out and mark that pipeline just to make sure that when you dig, you won't be able to dig in the right of way, and you're not gonna be able to excavate really anything in the right of way.
How
But you can
close
work
can
on top of
trees be to that area?
You try to keep if the permanent right of way is 40 feet, you wanna keep the trees outside.
But isn't it true you can't drive really heavy equipment over the pipeline, such as a log truck, bulldozer, et cetera?
To protect it and to be safe, you would
Can't
want.
drive over it.
Well, you could, you just wanna make sure that you either put the pipe a little bit deeper, or that you make some type of matting across it.
So you let them know ahead of time
Yes.
when they're doing that?
You don't always bore underneath small streams and wetlands, do you? Sometimes you dig a trench and lay the pipe
So, yes,
through a stream?
sometimes you do.
How do you decide whether you're
I think
gonna
it
bore
depends
under or?
I think it depends on what the impact would be.
You know,
If it's a small stream, if it's an intermittent stream, if it's something that doesn't run all year, and you could go through it when it's dry, you could go through there and probably do less impact than, creating an area to set up your drill rigs and.
but we don't decide
If you're,
ourselves,
yeah,
the
the
Department
DEP
of.
yeah,
the
if
US
you're
Army
going to, cross a stream, are you, limited to amount of time you could be disrupting that stream? Like, is there a time, like, say you're getting ready to cross a stream, and you're not gonna bore underneath it, you can dig a trench? Do they have a time limit to have that wrapped up and done, 24 hours, 48 hours, or something like
I don't
that?
know if they put that in the permit or not.
Yeah, I know it's more like a monthly deal, you've got to do between June and July or something like that.
Okay.
Whether to do that.
Now, the west branch of Martin's Creek is this creek out here. My creek on my property, which even the old timers in my neighborhood said, even in '72 Agnes flood, never flooded there. Well, it flooded in 2006, and my creek moved 250 feet. It's down now to bedrock. It's starting to show traces of bedrock, which means the old creek was about 6 foot higher than that. And of course, just down the road is the Tennessee pipeline to put the second one through. Now, they went underneath, and I assume that that's what they're gonna do with the Martins Creek West Branch, because any more disturbance in my flat land is just gonna create more of my property loss.
Well, that's the thing with the pipeline, when you put a pipeline in, they consider it a temporary disturbance, because after you put that pipeline in, you've gotta put the grade, the ground, back to the way it was before that pipeline went through there. So you should not be disturbing the, I don't know if hydraulics is the right term, but the way that the water had previously flowed through that area.
It's literally, it's nothing but cobblestone now. The only thing that's holding that whole property together is cobblestone. And another good flood, that's all gonna head down up on it too, with all my trees. Which will leave that pipeline exposed, because if, should they had to go across mine, they have to cross 300 feet of property, which is nothing but cobblestone.
Which pipeline did you say it was?
Pardon me?
Which pipeline did you say
It's
it was?
the Tennessee pipeline.
Yeah, and
Water
you
Mountain.
talked to Tennessee about your concerns?
No, I'm just wondering, should they ever want to cross the creek, anywhere near my place, all I have is cobblestone. And it would literally have to be buried underneath, because it's gonna be exposed if we have another huge flood. A lot of pressure, a lot of trees came down through there.
I just think it might be worthwhile to share that concern with
Yeah.
Tennessee.
On this transmission fee percentage that is being charged for transporting the gas, who gets that money, Cabot or Landowners?
We charge Cabot a fee to move the gas.
And that's why they can charge the lease person.
I guess that's individual to your leases, so I'm not sure. Some probably have them, some may not, depending on the age group.
No,
but that's,
what was happening was that Cabot was choosing to pay that fee for their landowners. And at a certain point, they made a decision a month, 2 months ago, and a letter was sent out to landowners saying that, that they were no longer going to pay that fee for landowners, that you would be charged the price of, that we charge to move the gas.
Okay.
So they do have the right to pass that fee along.
If it's in the lease,
if it's in the lease.
because I know some people have it written out. Probably knew that that was in there to be able to be written out, I think.
Pumping stations, I'm sorry, pumping stations. Any more in Brooklyn Township? Or we're gonna be-
I'm not aware of any more plan besides Central.
Planned currently, nothing in there.
That's not to say we're promising to never propose one. So,
Feeds back to the landlords. He's gonna be grandfathered, or if the clause says that, people relatively,
I'm sorry, I don't think I understood the question.
well, it'll be fee for marketing of the gas. But my contract says that's not the case, tentatively. Is this gonna be grandfathered?
Is that your contract with Cabot?
Yeah.
I'm afraid, I think Cabot's land department would have to answer that question. We're not a party to the lease that Land Holder has with Cabot.
I have another one.
But it's not about the Constitution, right?
No, no. Now, after everything is said and done, you were saying there wasn't supposed to be any trees planted in that area. Now, it's just an event of nature that trees, end up migrating into the area.
Yeah,
Now,
we'll go
whose
in and-
responsibility is it to keep the trees out of it?
We clear those,
We clear the right of
we
ways.
clear the right of ways and maintain them.
Okay, so it's not the landowner that has to go out there and kill seaweed and something else.
What kind of blasting restrictions do you have near a stone quarry, for example?
Well, you've got to file for special blasting permits. I'm not fully aware of how that works. I know we have blasted, depends on if you're within a certain number of feet.
How many feet?
Yeah, I think it depends on your situation. Like, I know there's different rules for highways, there's different rules for residential neighborhoods. I don't know a stone quarry.
Are you asking how far away the stone quarry would have to be from a pipeline if you were to blast?
Yeah.
And I think you need to talk to Pennsylvania DEP, because I'm, as Jack's
Yeah,
indicating, I think there are a lot of factors involved, but they would issue the permit and they would make that determination.
Going back to this blog that I talked to you about, one of the statements in this says, a massive industrialization of Brooklyn, PA, including the illegal Williams Central Station. Well, my last name is Williams, and I didn't know that I had a central station on it. But what are they talking about?
So one thing I want to make sure we touch on is in addition to that misstatement, I know the people who are involved in writing blogs like that have been saying that the central station is operational and flowing gas. So since you all live near to the station, you want to be sure you know at this point, Central Compressor Station is not yet operational. There are no compressors.
Where is this central?
Yeah, where is it?
On Turnpike Road?
Is that up on Powell?
Yes, that borders Brooklyn Township. It's in Brooklyn Township, borders Bridgewater Township on Turnpike Road.
And we farm it across the road from this.
It's located where an old quarry was.
Yeah.
So, but but there are no compressors at the station now. We have applied to Pennsylvania DEP for the appropriate air quality permit. We don't, have not yet acquired those permits, so consequently, we're not able to install our compressor stations. You said the illegal central.
That's what it says here. How, where do they get their basis for calling it illegal?
Well, they have no basis for calling it illegal, but that doesn't seem to make much of a difference. What they allege is that, and correct me if I get something wrong, but what they allege is that the central compressor station is being constructed to serve the Constitution pipeline. And as such, it should be regulated by FERC, and Williams should not yet be constructing the compressor station because it has not been permitted by FERC. So let's take that apart a little bit. First of all, the central compressor station was conceived before the Constitution pipeline was a thought.
If you don't know what FERC is the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. They regulate the interstate pipelines. So interstate commerce, the Transco Tennessee pipeline is interstate. So if it's an interstate pipeline, FERC will regulate that.
So the central compressor station was conceived well before the Constitution pipeline was conceived, and it was constructed to serve a lot of folks, probably a number of you, to collect the gas from the gas wells in the area, dewater it, and then move it from the central compressor station to the Transco line via the Springville line, and possibly the Tennessee pipeline as well. Sometime after that project was conceived, the central compressor station was conceived, somebody at Williams was talking to Cabot, and what they wanted to do was tap into a whole nother market. And what's that do? That means that Cabot can get a higher price for its gas, but the landowners get a higher price for its gas because you have the option of moving it to additional markets. So they're in the process, they're in the pre-filing stage of the process, and they don't have the permits. The project, we obviously are hopeful that it will move forward, but it may not. The central compressor station remains necessary for our midstream facility to water the gas that we collect from the fields, and again, move it to the Transco line via the Springville line, and then again, possibly the Tennessee pipeline, regardless of what happens with the Constitution pipeline. So that's the basis.
Now I have a question. I have 4 wells drilled on my farm, and they just left the torches the other day. Now there's 4 pads, but there's only 2 stacked with the flames. I guess I expected 4.
They may be routing 2 into 1.
Okay.
Or they may not even be producing out of the 2. What they're doing now is they're flaring.
Yeah.
So they're going through a process of allowing the gas pressure to build up and taking water off the well. And as they take water off, gas is starting to come. So they're flaring that natural gas, and by flaring it, they're destroying the methane. So they're basically, it's good for the environment because you're destroying it. It's not a greenhouse gas at that point. Now, that's your money going up.
Oh,
Too. Sorry to tell you.
Do I want to put the flame out or what?
They're not as easy as a birthday cake.
I see these flames coming out of this, well, and I ask myself, why is it necessary to
Yeah, I think primarily they need to get the water off the well first. The water that they inject down in the well to fracture it, that water is 5-6 million gallons is down there. 80% of that is gonna come back over time, so the water is holding that gas down, that pressure. So as they get the water off, the gas will start to come up. Now, I think a technique to
It's part of the flow back process after those completion techniques to dewater, like you're saying. They also are able to get an idea about the test flow rate during flow back. But now they're moving towards this green completion where they will stop as best they can flaring at all, and they will actually just flow back into our gathering system.
Would you just explain flow back to them? We work in the gas field, they don't.
Well, and that's exactly it. It's just dewatering after completion.
Well, you see, the layperson, if you've got millions of gallons of water down a hole, you're gonna pump it out.
Right.
That's what I would do if I had to pump that side. But you guys, or whoever is doing this, how can you eliminate the water by flaring it out?
Well, the gas pressure from the bottom of the hole pushes the water up through the production tubing into a separator where it separates, and then the gas is flared.
Yeah, so it's that gas pushing that water back out. And then the more water that comes out, the more gas that comes in, and now you just, all of a sudden, now you're producing more gas, and then you'll turn that into a pipeline.
The money is going up with the things that.
Really a very small amount, but it is.
Yeah, but when you don't have the
But
pipe,
give Kevin hell on it anyway.
when you don't have the gathering pipe ready,
They'll shut the well.
you shut the well off, but does that make the water settle back down on the gas?
You'll have, if you put 6 million gallons in, there's gonna be a certain amount that comes out, like 80-90%. If you could take off most of that water and then shut the well, when you actually have the pipeline there and it's ready, you might have to come in and take a little bit more water off, but you're gonna be that much closer to having the gas. It's not creating more water.
Does the gas won't heat?
No.
Well,
No, that gas is trapped.
Do they burn all the wells that way?
Do they complete them and then flare them? Mostly up here they do. I think out west, Nick was starting to talk a little bit about what they call green completions.
Yeah, a lot of wells elsewhere, they'll flow back because gathering pipelines are readily available. You have ready access there.
Where they'll flow back and it will not flare. It'll come out, the water gets separated, and the gas then gets delivered into the pipeline.
Because there's one up there, I know they said it's supposedly online already, and that was never flared.
But the pipeline was already there.
But the pipeline was already there.
Yeah.
I live part of the time in Ohio, and their gas that they're getting is not as pure as it is here.
That's right.
So when they burn it off, they're saving that gas. They're saving parts of, like, I presume propane from the methane, and some other things which they can sell.
Oh, yeah, that's right, if it's in liquid form, correct.
It's economical out there to do. Here, you just waste it.
Yes, the gas is definitely different out in either western PA and Ohio than it is up here. Up here, it's as close to natural gas, pipeline quality natural gas as it is. You really just have to take out some water, and you can put it right into your home, you can put it right into a power plant.
One of the things that's important to us about that is that, it requires significantly less processing and treatment. So some of the facilities that they have it out in southwest Pennsylvania and Ohio, we don't need them because it is pipeline quality.
Yeah, but aren't our wells deeper?
Well,
As a general rule, they're deeper and they are high producing.
but it varies across
It's
the state entirely.
And it's different across the country. You can have 17,000-foot wells in the shale plays in Texas and New Mexico where we're 6,000 feet here.
heard that, after the beginning of the year, that, flaring, Pennsylvania was gonna regulate it so that it couldn't be flared. They wanted it recaptured somehow.
That's moving to that green completion.
So Pennsylvania is requiring no flaring after the beginning of the year, or is that?
I'm not sure, that's another cabinet question or a producer question, but I know they are moving towards that, I don't know the deadlines.
Are you under some deadline with Cabot, your contract with Cabot? They're drilling, they drill a well. Do you guys, are you obligated to move that gas in a certain amount of time? Do you need to get a gathering line to that?
I wouldn't call it an obligation, I think that our interests are aligned because they don't make money unless there's a pipeline there, and we don't make money unless the gas is there, so we try to coordinate that the best we can.
Right. But you're not on any timetable to move their gas?
Oh, and typically we are trying to build that gathering capacity as quickly as we can.
Yeah.
We don't mind being there one day earlier.
Do you know the status of the pipelines that are being built right around here in Brooklyn? When they might be moving gas?
Not off the top of my head. There are some that are available.
I don't know what pipelines you were talking about.
There's a few different ones.
So we're in construction right now, numerous pipelines, so.
You know where, there's a lot of digging going on right now, right off 106. Is that you guys? You know?
I don't know.
The company is Price Gregory, they're by Mountain View School.
That's correct.
That's
not us.
Price Gregory's with
That's assignment.
Would that be, what's the name I said I heard? Bluestone, I heard
Bluestone.
that name mentioned.
I didn't think Bluestone was down
I-
as far south as Susquehanna County, but.
I don't know where they're,
Well, he's talking about Mountain View School, though.
and Mountain View School would make sense, that, because Southwestern has a lot of, activity out there. But if it's Bluestone, and right now we are contracted with Price Gregory either, so.
You told us it's a company based in Detroit.
Bluestone is owned partially by a company called DTE, which was Detroit, I think.
Detroit something energy.
So they have no affiliation with you whatsoever.
No.
This is really gonna sound stupid. You mean, like, all these different companies are putting pipelines in, and what, do you guys all hook up sooner or later, or are you all on your own, or?
We're independent.
How's that work?
Bluestone is a company, is a midstream company, the same as we are, so they provide the same services that we do. They're providing for different customers that we do not do business with.
We compete with them.
We compete with them.
We compete with Bluestone. We're happy to have their customers in the future, let's be clear. Williams has a number of customers, Cabot, WPX, Rizo, I know I'm
That's it for
missing
right now.
one. Okay, and you know, welcome the opportunity to build the pipelines for all of the producers in this area. That's not a dumb question, that's a
But by
good question.
customers, are you referring like to the driller, like Cabot?
Correct.
It's Cabot
Yes.
Correct.
all around us, and yet it's all these different names on these pipelines. But
Well,
Cabot would be the same customer, correct?
Correct. Now, there's different pipelines. If it's Cabot acreage, then we'll be building the infrastructure to serve that acreage. The pipelines may have different names. Maybe names for the person that has the well pad, or
Think of the pipelines as the road system. So, you have the state and the county and the federal government, and local municipalities,
Okay.
all building roads. But they all name them individually so they can identify them and know, we'll all know when we say, well, take 167. to somewhere. It's the same for us. We'll be referring, I'm just gonna pick a name I know, well, is the Windsor Pipeline, which runs from Susquehanna County up to Windsor, New York. And it's just helpful being able to explain to people what pipeline you're talking about.
But the gas from the southwest well, or Chief or someone else, does that gas run through your pipeline?
No, it does not.
What about if the pipeline runs through Cabot land? Does that come to you?
Not if it's not Cabot gas. Cabot doesn't own land. If it runs through Cabot acreage, it's the landowner saying, I'm gonna let Bluestone put their pipeline on my land, even though I've leased my minerals to Cabot.
Well, I can tell you, I can tell you that the pipeline that's on the end of our road is going to be cut through Cabot leased property. And this Bluestone company is the one who's in charge of doing the pipeline.
Yeah, so Bluestone just went to those landowners and asked them for permission to run their pipeline through their property, even though those landowners already leased the minerals to Cabot. And those landowners said, sure.
The mineral leasing is totally different,
Totally different.
whole different ballgame from who they let lay the pipeline on their own privately owned property.
That is correct. It's a landowner decision.
If it's a Cabot leased property, and Cabot decides to drill a well later on that property, then they also have to put a pipeline in?
Yes, then we need to get a pipeline to that well to move that gas out.
So you put two pipelines together? How are those one another?
Well, it's wherever the landowner wants it. The
So
landowner.
you would not connect, we would not connect a pipeline we were constructing to a Cabot well with the Bluestone pipeline. But it's not a problem for it to be on the same property.
All these pipelines are in the well building.
Well, the pipelines are all tracked. I mean, we have very complex GIS systems that we know from, GPS locations, where every pipeline is. That's why when a one call goes in, when you dial 811, you say, I wanna dig on this person's farm, we provide our maps to the one call system. So they will look in that area and say, okay, there's a Williams line there, there's an electric line there, there's a water line there, and they'll send out a message to each one of those companies and say, somebody's gonna dig out there, you got 3 days to go out and mark the location of those lines. So it is all tracked. That's why we know that the pipeline is 75 feet underneath the Susquehanna River at a specific point.
And within that tracking system, that's also how, over time, as we collect mechanical integrity data about thickness, about the health of that pipeline, it's actually tied into that system. And that's how you're able to track issues that you've had, and things like that. So it's a completely integrated system where you can see everything there is to know about that pipeline is there, from its thickness, even its where it was made, are all tracked through that system.
I have a question. Say a pipeline runs quite a ways, quite a distance. Do you guys have like shut-offs periodically in case there's a catastrophic break or something that you could shut it?
Yes, that's right. On long pipelines, we'll have valves that are called high-lows or
Line breaks.
they'll call them, or line breaks, that operate on a low downstream, a high downstream, or on a rate of change. Basically, those conditions tell the valve controller that there's an issue that it needs to actuate and close on.
So it's pretty fail-safe?
Yeah, they're tested annually.
So if, for example, somebody's out there and is digging and did not call one call and strikes a pipeline, well, now you've got gas coming out of that pipeline, you're gonna see the pressure drop. And that valve is looking at those pressures, and it will say, there's a problem here because the pressure just dropped. I'm gonna close this valve, I'm gonna close this valve, and now that entire section of pipe is isolated, can't get any more gas into it. And same thing, if pressure goes up, you wanna protect the pipe, and they're rated to certain pressures. So it gets to a certain pressure, it just shuts the valve, and you can't move any more gas.
Just don't, we want another BP, you know, in the Gulf, where they couldn't shut it. Like, they're not
Well, that was
underwater.
30,000 feet deep underwater, though. That was hard to get to.
Worst case scenario, if there was a fire where the pipeline is, do you work in collaboration with locals for the emergency, or do they have to wait until you come from somewhere to handle the emergency? I was just wondering the
Well, I guess
response
it
time.
depends on what the emergency is. We, like Nick said in his presentation, we train with the emergency responders and the Emergency Management Association. So we try to envision any type of scenario that can possibly happen and what the right way is to address that. Every scenario is different, but, I mean, you know, when you have gas,
Typically, yeah, but typically we will assume incident command in order to isolate energy sources.
So they
Because we know
can't,
how to do that.
they can't initiate anything to try to control until you guys get there.
now, if it's a compressor station, I mean, to have a fire, you need fuel, you need oxygen, you need ignition. Well, if you have oxygen and ignition and somehow there's fuel in that mix, you have a fire, you need to cut the fuel source off. So what happens in that case, the station has fire eyes. They're looking down at the station at all times. If there's even a flash, it will, what's called ESD the station, or emergency shutdown. It will shut a valve at the inlet of the station, it shuts a valve at the outlet of the station. All of that gas will get moved into a vent, and you take the fuel away from it. So there's no reason for first responders to go into that building for any reason. You let the fuel burn, and it will burn out.
Now, I was thinking the pipeline's like out in the country,
And if,
anything happens.
yeah, if they're out in the country,
It's the same
it's
situation.
the same concept. So you would have those two, if it's in between two line break valves, they would shut, isolate that pipe. That gas would vent, and then at a point, there would be no more gas in the pipe.
This is all done electronically, not manually, right?
Electronic.
Yeah, the line breaks are actually, either electronic or they're mechanical, pneumatic mechanical. So they're locally right there, there's no,
There's no
for
power
those
going.
line breaks, there's no remote logic solving or anything that happens, there's just that valve action.
But for all of them, to turn it back on, you have to manually
That's right.
come in to ensure that it doesn't happen by
You
accident.
can always shut something down remote and automatic, you can never start something up unless you're right there.
What kind of pressures are in these pipelines?
On this upstream side of the compressors, or on the suction side of the compressors, it can be anywhere from 400 pounds to 800 pounds we're probably seeing today. After they get compressed, you could be 1,100 or 1,200 pounds.
Is it liquid after it leaves the pump to the station?
No, it's gas.
Gas?
What is the pressure it takes to liquefy natural gas? You know?
I think it's more temperature.
Yeah, it depends on the temperature.
Yeah, I think
I don't have that.
It's
curve in
minus,
front of me.
minus
minus
300 something.
260 degrees.
Is it minus 360?
Yeah.
Pressure at STP.
Stop.
Stop.
Yeah, when they talk about LNG, liquefied natural gas, I know that the company that I used to work for before Williams had a terminal in Louisiana where they actually brought in LNG and turned it back into a gas. But to liquefy it, to put it onto the tankers when they used to ship it in, it was minus 260.
And it has to be kept at minus
It has to be
260.
kept there because as it starts to warm up, it just turns back into a gas.
So everything here is gas phase. There's no phase change to it.
When that gas is exported, does that turn into a liquid for export?
They have to.
And then they have to maintain that low temperature on the ship?
Yeah. Yeah, the volume difference is, when it's liquefied, it's 1/600th the volume. It's the only way to make it economical to actually spend billions of dollars for that facility, pay for the tanker to send it someplace. You have to be able to condense it.
Is that, the gas, for example, coming out of the ground up here, is that pure methane? Or will it be pure methane when the flaring is all done?
The gas up here is as close to pure natural gas methane, it's 97.5% methane.
Yeah, its composition is very close to what the outlet of our cryogenic processing plants would be in other basins. So its composition is very pure.
You'd be able to, if you just made sure that the water was taken out, you'd be able to put that gas in your house.
Pressure to take the frack a well.
That I do not know.
That's
That's a cabin.
There's a gentleman, I think.
Right here.
Hey, I want to know is, since Cabot ships with gas with you, where do you pick up the gas at?
We pick it up at every one of their wellheads.
At the wells, and you measure it at the wells?
Yes, there's measurement at the well.
Okay.
Cabin has measurement at the well. We have measurement at the well. We'll take custody of the gas. So it comes into our possession. We'll then move it to a station. We'll compress it, dehydrate it, and then it's measured again before it's delivered into one of the interstate pipelines.
But you do measure it at the well?
That's the only way that they can accurately do their allocations for the
Because if you
landowners.
did, and they had to ship it to you, they would have to own the pipeline, wouldn't they?
Correct. And different producers have different business models. Cabot chooses not to own that gathering line. Some other producers want to own that.
So back to this illegal central station. Are you telling me that you're still in the process of everything that has to be done for that it will then be functioning and gathering?
Are you talking about the Constitution pipeline?
No, no.
Central station.
The central station, the one that's up on Paul Well. So how about us that are having wells done here, like for instance mine, which I'm thinking the pipeline that Williams is laying, that's where it's headed.
Presently, we're preparing to commission the central free flow, which is just dehydration with no compression. That's what we're permitted to commission, put in service, start on. So that's happening in the next month or so. So those volumes will begin to be brought to market.
And so it's not a stalemate there or a blockage of the gas from these wells going into the.
No.
Okay. Ron, I'll be giving you a check.
Since we're talking about individual pipelines now, what about the pipeline being built to the Corbin pad? It appears to be nearing completion. They're welding there.
Yeah, I don't know specifically.
I can say to Corbin that's also within the next month and a half. That's what we're projecting.
To be completed or to be moving gas?
To be completed and flowing.
And flow.
Yeah, Nick and I are in this technical services group, so we're technically in operations. All of our construction is done by our engineering and construction group. So they have a lot of projects going on. We're being prepared to operate the facilities as they come online, but can't remember the names of all the pipelines.
Yeah, it's Corbin, it's definitely within the next month and a half. I don't know the precise.
And that gas is going back to Dimmick? Back to the Teal pumping station, or?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah.
How about the pipeline that goes to Donna Williams as well? That goes, what pumping station is that going back to?
I'm not sure.
Does that go back to Dimmick also until?
I'm not sure where those are at. Okay.
Go outside and listen.
Well, I know when I received some checks for the right of way, up in the left-hand corner, it said Hapa. And I called and said, have you made a mistake? Because I expected it to say Williams.
Yeah, there are some.
And they said that is how they're identifying that? As Hapa?
I don't know. Okay.
Where will the gas be going from the Teddick well? I think that one's
Tedic is through Central as well.
Well,
Where's,
Lady right back here.
I don't know if you got a chance to, anybody asked this question or not, but explain the difference in the actual pipelines, because my understanding is the gathering lines come from the individual wells, and they're smaller. And then they come in, they feed into a larger pipeline, but they can free flow temporarily, but if you put a compressor station at the end of all those gathering lines into the larger Constitution laser line, there's more flowing through that. So it can free flow, and you'll be getting royalties based on the free flowing gas. But once the compressor station's in there and they're coming in there, you can transport more gas, so.
Because of increased capacity.
Right, so.
So there's a lot behind that.
How you guys can how that works specifically, or?
Well, I kind of know how it works because I live in another area, and we have that happening right now. But I hear a lot of questions regarding pipelines, individual pipelines, and the gathering lines are, what's the dimension on the gathering lines?
I mean,
16, the pipe?
well, it could be anywhere from 6 to 8 to 10. It all depends on the volume, you think. The larger trunk lines could be 16 or 24.
Trunk lines, you mean
Like you'll have the
laser
gathering
constant-
lines maybe connecting 3 different well pads, and they're,
Okay.
say, 8 inches. And they might comment up to a 16-inch pipe, a 12 or a 16-inch. You do need a bigger pipe to move more
And
gas.
those are all generalities. I mean, depending on the flow rate, you may size, an individual. You have pipelines leaving single well pads that are 12 inch.
But I
think what she's
yeah, I think
getting
your
at-
question is more about the pressures on the gathering system.
Well, the difference in the actual pipelines too, because like in my area, we had signed for gathering lines from the actual well pads through our property to the compressor station. So they're all heading that direction. We had all done our lease agreements for the pipelines as, I think it was 12-inch pipe. But then they came back and they asked for 16-inch pipe. I assume because of the amount of wells that are flowing through that. So the gathering lines are 16, but then they're all headed towards the compressor station, which means a bigger pipe, because the amount of gas flowing through it is the laser line in my area.
Yeah, well, yes and no. I mean, you could, if you have a higher pressure, you can move more volume. This is where a lot of the science comes into it. So
Right.
you may have a 16-inch pipe coming into a compressor station that at 450 pounds moves X. When you compress it and put it into a 16-inch line at 1100 pounds, it's going to move X plus a lot more. So
Do you know what the laser line dimension is?
the laser line is 16 inches.
It is 16.
It is 16 inches. And that was designed to be a high-pressure trunk line. So that line is designed to run up to 1,440 pounds.
It's a little bit like the road systems.
Yes.
And so you have the local roads, and around here, a lot of the local roads are rather narrow, maybe one car, if it's pushed two, and they're dirt roads, and they're smaller roads, they serve fewer homes. And you go down to the county roads, and it's maybe paved, and it's a larger road, two-way, room for two cars going in opposite directions, and you have more cars on it, probably more homes, possibly businesses. Not dissimilar to one of our a larger gathering line, to which a number of gathering lines that are pulling gas from the wellhead would lead. Is there a specific name? It's not a transmission line.
Well, we call them trunk lines.
The trunk line then. So the trunk lines are like the county road. And then you have, by the way, they stop at the compressor station along the way, and it actually they're called compressor stations because they actually compress or squash the gas. That adds, they use pressure to do that, and in addition to it moving faster, it also takes less space. And that's why you're able to move more gas within the pipeline once you compress it, because it takes up less room within the pipeline. And then it's moved to, you can think of it as the interstate system, interstate pipelines that take a gas from a large area, quite a number of wells, and moves it to market. You might have a few, not just in the interstate pipeline, like a Transco line. Williams Midstream is not the only party to be putting gas into that line. There's going to be a number of companies who are moving gas to various interstate pipelines, and they're going to move it to a large number of markets with multiple customers.
And those may be 30 or 36-inch or 42-inch pipes.
The compressor stations only have Williams's pipes going to it, or do the other pipe companies?
Ours.
There's just our.
It's your own.
Just for the people to understand, when we got the information from the Constitution, which is a 30-inch line, it could supply gas for 3 million homes daily. And we were told Cabot will own, like, their supply would be 1/4 of that. So I think that was just information. Maybe you weren't familiar with the Constitution.
They gotta have a compressor station every so many miles apart in order to keep that pressure pushing.
The interstate pipelines certainly do.
The gathering stations, no. The interstate pipelines, yes. The gathering system, what we do, we have to have a compressor station wherever we're gonna make a delivery into an interstate pipeline. Because if the interstate pipelines are running at 1,100 or 1,200 pounds, gas cannot get into them unless they're that pressure.
Coming out.
Okay, well, that's right, unless it's that pressure or greater, so that's why we'll have a station like Central that will pressurize that gas so that it can go down to Transco and meet the Transco pressure.
Any other questions?
I have one. Are all interstate pipelines, capable of doing the domain?
I believe they are, if it's underneath the FERC process.
What was the FERC website you were?
Yeah, there's some really good resources available on the FERC website. I don't know if anybody's taken a look there. There's a citizens guide or a guide for citizens that talks about interstate pipeline development, which is pretty lengthy for sure.
You could Google, I'm sure if you Google FERC, F-E-R-C, and pipeline, it would
Yeah,
be one of the first things.
It's just FERC, just FERC.gov.
Can you give a rough estimate as to how long a well like Williams wells will produce gas?
That's really more of a Cabot
Yeah, it's
question.
a Cabot question. It's probably really too early in the life of these wells to really know.
I know that they generally estimate between around 50 years, but a specific well, we couldn't.
I don't mean exact well, but a ballpark figure. You said 50 years.
Yeah, generally 40 to 50 years is what their expectation is.
The region where I came from, for instance, in northwest New Mexico, we had producing wells that were 75 years old.
Now, does it maintain the pressure over that period of time?
No.
No, it goes down.
It goes down quickly, which is one of the reasons why they have a very high pressure initially, and they produce a lot of gas, but that's why it may decline 40% over that first year.
40%.
But really, these are questions for Cabot.
Yeah. But in the well, that's why you want to then bring the pressure down on the well, because then it actually will flow more gas.
Any other questions?
You bring the pressure down, you flow water gas. I thought it was the other way around.
No, they wanna have a lower suction
So you say
pressure.
by us using compression to reduce our gathering pressure, we create uplift in those wells so that they'll flow more. So if a pipeline, if a well is seeing 1,000 pounds versus it seeing 450, at 450 it's going to flow more gas. So one of our charges is to try to reduce that gathering pressure to create uplift and increase volume.
This gentleman had a question.
Yeah, the relationship between Williams and Cabot. When I had asked Cabot about, line laying, I said, well, we just sold that business to Williams. I'd like to know, what does that mean exactly for the leaseholders that had pipeline language written into their Cabot leases? Does that mean that that was purchased by Williams, or what exactly did you buy in the transaction?
Right away, but I believe that it was assigned, when we purchased those assets, that was assigned to us.
What does that mean, assigned?
We now have that right to lay the pipeline on that property as well.
And they go, you pay them extra for that, even though that was a part of their, Cabot lease? They still get paid
Pay
for.
Cabot or
They'll pay the
pay the land?
The
It would,
landowner.
what we do is we have the obligation to follow the terms of that agreement, whatever that agreement says.
So if the agreement said that Cabot was gonna pay you X dollars per foot if they had to run a pipeline, and we have to run the pipeline, then we will pay you that X dollars per foot.
Well, I found that, when the agreement with Cabot and then when Williams came along, I thought they were very, very generous compared to what Cabot had offered.
Williams choose to do that.
I have another question aside of pipelines, though. I had heard rumors that in South Montrose that Williams was possibly going to put in a natural gas pumping station, like for vehicles.
We have, you might want to take this, but we have regulatory,
Well, Cabot, we have put in a station for Cabot. Is that South Montrose?
Yeah, I'm not sure. Yes, that's.
it's in the vicinity.
It's in the vicinity. Cabot is gonna be converting their fleet over to compressed natural gas.
Which they already have, actually, right?
Their trucks.
Right.
Well, yeah, they'll start using compressed natural gas instead of gasoline or diesel fuel. We are looking ourselves to find a partnership in Susquehanna County, in Wyoming County, the areas that we operate, so that we too can convert our vehicles to compressed natural gas.
You hurry up.
But
We're trying.
it's complicated because there are regulations that prevent us from constructing and installing a station where we could sell to the public. So I don't know exactly the regulations that apply to Cabot, but they have some of the same issues. So it's not an easy matter just to try and decide to sell to the public. We're working with a number of folks who are interested in installing a natural gas facilities that would sell to the public. If you know of people, and let them know, we're happy to talk to them. What we can do is to help facilitate that. And we'll work with them and try and make the process easier. But unfortunately, we're not able to actually construct a station ourselves.
So the place that I had heard rumored was Williams.
It may be Williams Oil and Gas. I know Williams Oil and Gas is involved in Towanda at the Dandy Mart.
That's
The location was Robinson's Market in South Montrose.
I don't know.
Okay, these are coming together, because I heard.
Williams Oil and Gas?
Well, but I heard, I knew Williams's Market had been bought out or was going out of business, or Robinson's, right?
Robinson's.
I heard Adam Diaz bought that.
Ah,
That
yes,
that makes sense here.
But we'll let Aaron announce that if he chooses to do that.
But it wouldn't be to the public then, it would be basically for Williams Fleet, if they got the
Well,
permits and everything.
Are you talking about what's happening in South Montrose?
Yeah, what could
We
possibly?
don't know. We're not involved in that at all. We don't know. So we can speculate with you, but, but we don't know. Williams is not involved in that arrangement.
I think what we could say is we would love to see that infrastructure built, and we would help out in any way possible, because we've got a lot of gas here,
Yeah,
and
but can you put your gas into that station if he had?
we don't own gas. That's where.
No, your pipe, whatever, gas.
We can,
That's where it starts to get a little bit tricky with the regulations as it relates to utilities and delivering to end-use customers. And we're trying to work through all those issues. Utilities can do that, they can install that line through a public CNG station and not have any issues.
mhm.
Leather stocking is a utility that is working to do that. But we would love to see them built. We would love to convert all of our trucks to CNG. We've actually purchased 6 of them.
What did you guys say at the last meeting, or was on the stair, if they were going to be constructing, lack of a better word, like fueling station type, not at the same time?
There's a lot of talk around trying to get that done.
I think it's a goal shared by many, many people.
Conversions, I've heard, are generally $7,000 to $10,000.
It's gotta work for me, right, don't
Now, CNG in Oklahoma, for
regular
example, is
use.
selling the equivalent of about $1.30 a gallon compared to, it's probably cheaper today, $3.60 gas.
How you doing? Took out the rabbit?
Any other? I think we're losing our audience. I'm sure it's not because we're not fascinated.
Joe, at the last meeting, there were some questions on cards that Joe had taken back with him. Joe, do you want to address that?
Yeah, Janice has all the cards, and they were sent to corporate in Texas. So the way Cabot works is their headquarters is in Texas. That's where those questions were sent to, and I heard from Janice like 3 days ago through email. So they're being answered. When you'll get those answers, I'm not sure. But when I get them, obviously, it'll either be in an email to everybody, or we'll just talk about it at the next meeting. And one of the main questions on those, and a few different times, was the cost of the pipelines coming in people's royalty checks, which you kind of talked about. But again, that's a Cabot thing. So we'll get those answers to you hopefully soon.
Well, thank you for having us.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
Okay. We've had this meeting and there's been pipelines discussed. Last meeting, we had hoped to get some advice on how to read your royalty checks and how they set up the unitization. And Janice Lobdell was not able to be here. Now, Energy in Depth will bring any kind of speaker in we want with the subject. Do we want to look at trying to get Janice here and address the royalty checks and the unitization?
I can keep working on that until we decide something else. You know, I'll keep at it.
Now, I know over in Franklin Township with their group like this, they had a water specialist, right, Kelly?
Mm-hmm.
Water specialists come in. We could get somebody, someone like that. Are there any other subjects that you folks would like to know more about that then Energy in Depth can reach out there and pursue that speaker, bring that information to us?
We came here tonight thinking that we would have that lady that you just mentioned from Cabot, who would answer all of these questions. And she is here.
No, well, the information was passed out.
I'm not as pretty as her, but.
Switch.
That's right.
I've never seen her.
No, Helen Humphrey, if we had said it was gonna be pipeline discussion tonight.
I'm sorry, but I thought the discussion was, that lady was supposed to be there the last time. Be here,
She
she
couldn't.
could make it, which I understand. I thought that she would be here, I am sorry if I insulted you.
You didn't at all, I'm just teasing.
So that's,
Okay, do you want to look at, we've had a meeting once a month here. Do you want to continue to have a meeting a month? Or being the holidays are coming up here, do we, we don't wanna lose you, but you wanna look at a meeting, say, the middle of December? Or would you like to wait until the middle of January? Don't everybody speak up at once? Yes, Robin?
Weather depending, I'd like to, I don't want, weather depending January, because I find these very nice and informational. So, but if the holidays are coming and people are really caught up.
Well, everybody's so busy during the holidays, All right, what do I brought a calendar here. Wednesday night seems to work quite well. If we look at in January, I'm thinking there's January 16th, there's January 23rd.
Is that a Wednesday?
The 16th? Okay, Joe. Now, what
What day
subject?
is that?
It's a Wednesday. January 16th.
7,
Pardon?
7 o'clock?
7 o'clock here. Do we want to shoot for Janice to be here then?
Yeah. I can work.
Janice Lavdo?
Okay. Yep. Keep working with it.
Now, we've got almost everybody's emails, and,
There was a couple people, I think, that came in that didn't sign in, so they're new people. This is the first time they've been here. If they, they wanna sign in for us to be able to, keep them informed.
and I really appreciate it. Ruth Hunsinger came forward, Jim Davis has offered. Now, one of the things in this blog is that, they kind of feel like we're a closed group, that everybody, I guess I'm supposed to, there are 4 or 5 people, we're supposed to try to find everybody's telephone number in Brooklyn Township and give them a call. You folks, that's the best way to spread the word, is call your neighbors, we didn't put it in the newspaper because originally we looked at it that this was for Brooklyn Township landowners and leaseholders. But we welcome people, I can see my brother and the neighbors. They're from Gibson Township, and Kelly is from Franklin Township. It's open to the public, but yeah, we didn't want the rabble-rousers, they're kind of behind this thing that they even put my picture on, but they're again, oh yeah. Because, I feel that, and I've had this comment from about everybody that's come to these meetings, they really feel informed, and it's coming from sources closest to us. We don't want you people to feel like you've come and wasted your time. If you know everything there is to know, then you don't belong here. Because we're looking to learn and expand our knowledge of what's going on. So, now, you had offered to make signs for us.
Well, that's going to come from Cabot, and Bill's currently has money for it. So. that's gonna
Bill
come from
DeRoche
him.
went and took the big stuff.
Yeah, over the weekend, yeah. But I'll work with him to get more on that.
Should we get a head count on who would like these signs for their lawns?
Let me talk to Bill, it's gonna be a poll, so whatever we, it's gonna be.
There's no
I mean,
charge
we
to
can
a
do-
poll.
Yeah, it doesn't come
They're
out of
coming
Cabot,
from
it's just
Cabot.
Cabot, it's not interviewed yet, that's Cabot.
What's
And
the
then-
purpose of the sign? You should
For
let
people
them
to know that, we have this group, and we're a positive thinking group to move forward. And like, I wasn't the one that decided what the name of this should be. I had other people, Dick Zick, Mickey Clem, Tom Davis, some other landowners here in Brooklyn Township, and we brainstormed of what we wanted to try to name our group. And we came up with Brooklyn Township Teamwork. Isn't that what this is all about? It's about Marcellus and it's about our future. So that was the little name of our group. There's no officers, there's no money involved, but it does take, it's nice to have some volunteers to help to do the emails and make telephone calls and all. So if there's anyone else that would like to help with this, please see me.
Are these signs supposed to be similar to those,
Timid crowd?
rides?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yep. And Kelly Harding is here from Franklin Township, and it really was one of her friends how I learned about having a group like this in our Farm Bureau booth at Harvard Fair while we were selling milk and apples. And I thought, this sounds like a neat idea for Brooklyn Township. There's some gas wells already being drilled, and we know there's going to be more. And they're gonna be here for many, many years. So why not bring a group together? This blog also is speculating that there's already problems in Brooklyn. Well, did any of you know of any water problems yet? Or, yeah, it's kind of noisy up the Williams farm, but that too shall pass.
They're always.
Quieter, see, and I moved down the other farm. Well, is there anything else that we should address here? So we'll shoot for Janice Lopto.
Yep.
We'll talk about royalty checks, how to read the royalty checks, and unitization
Yep.
for the next meeting, and that will be Wednesday, January 16th at 7 o'clock here at the Brooklyn Township Building. Anything else for the good of the order?
Yeah.